Hey buddy, hand me that wrench right there, the red thing.
This?
Yeah, hand me that.
Okay.
We can go ahead and get into our next install. Again, I'm super excited about this one. It's something this bike needs with the climate I live in. As you can see, I'm already sweating. I went ahead and bought a Jagg External Oil Cooler. Now, this is not the fan assisted one. I do not do a lot of city riding, so I shouldn't need the fan one. This thing looks pretty sweet, looks like a pretty straightforward install. Got some hose here, instructions, and then of course the actual radiator itself. Now this is a pretty small little 10-row radiator, and it mounts right here. It essentially mounts, yeah, like this. So this is your front tire, this is your frame coming down. It mounts to your 2 front engine mount bolts on the dyno. I may have to do some fabricating to this, given that I have the skate bar on mine. I may have to drill a hole above the actual bracket here and maybe cut part of this off, because I think with this current length, it's gonna hit on the bar and not allow this to mount properly. So we'll see when we get there. And then the oil filter adapter, and then a few other small odds and ends in here. Hose clamps, zip ties, you know, shit like that. So this should be a pretty sweet install. Along with that, I went ahead and got a small little 40mm oil pressure gauge to sort of better be able to monitor my engine. I have a pretty cool little setup for this. Basically where the sensor for your oil pressure indicator goes on your gauge, or on your light indicators on your dash, there's an adapter for that pretty much moves that back about 2 inches, and then you can plug this in with a T-fitting and then run the hose up to your gauge wherever you're going to put it. I haven't quite finalized where I'm going to put this or how exactly I'm going to run it. There's a few different options. I may just run it off the engine. I may try to figure out a way to mount it up next to my gauge on the handlebars. Haven't quite decided, but that's an option. I may go digital next. I just wanted to do this just so I have something for now to monitor. And then of course I'll be putting only the finest of Badger milks in my engine. AMSOIL V-twin, primary transmission and engine oil. I'm gonna go ahead and do a full service while I am draining the oil. So I'm gonna do primary, transmission, all that good jazz. Probably clean up the chain, get some new lube on the chain. This thing needs some love. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get started on this install. Dyna is on the lift. Let's get this bitch jacked up. Go ahead and drain all the fluids, and then pop the oil filter off, and then we can go ahead and get started on the cooler install. So all the fluids and everything have been drained. I went ahead and refilled the primary and transmission. Got the oil filter out. So now we're ready to start the installation of the actual cooler system. thing comes with some pretty good instructions. It's made in the US, so they're actually in English, which is good. Remove spin-on filter, done. Clean the surface, done. Verify to install. Okay, so apparently this is the stock to Jagg nipple, which you do not need unless your bike has a pre-existing oil cooler, stock oil cooler. Mine does not, so I should not need that. Okay, so now it says disassemble the Jagg offset oil filter adapter, which is this, with the 5 30-seconds, just taking these 5 pins out. So there's that, and then we're just gonna set this aside, out of the way. The same with the gasket. This is gonna come off. So remember that goes with the actual rubber side facing the adapter. And now this is what we're gonna put on the bike with a, I'm guessing this is the 7/8 socket. And this is gonna tighten down on the stock oil filter area. Okay, the instructions on this part are a little confusing, but let me try to clarify it for you. All right, so this surface is gonna get cleaned off real well. Make sure there's no debris or oil or anything on there. And then, unlike an oil filter, this rubber O-ring that's on the back side of this mounting plate, you do not want to put oil on that. And what you're gonna do is with the longer side facing up is what it says. Basically, you want the feed lines on the bottom. So we're gonna put this in here, and then finger tighten this down. Okay, so that's pretty much all you're gonna do for that. So that's the adapter on there. Again, finger tight, no oil on the O-ring, and you want the feed lines on the adapter plate facing on the bottom. Okay, so now we have the adapter plate and the gasket. Remember, the rubber side of the gasket goes against the adapter plate, not against the base. All right, now for the Dyna install. This is an anti-rotation bracket. That's gonna orient just like that. This is gonna keep this whole thing from rotating when you're putting an oil filter on. This whole thing's gonna go on now, and I'm gonna tighten down each of these screws snugly. Okay, so now that this is on, you want to rotate this so it's... see, this thing says to touch the engine with it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go about right there with it, so it's close to the engine. And then you're going to take this whole mounting plate back off. And just for speed, I'm going to use my impact here. Alright, now what you're going to do is take a 1-inch socket, and then you're going to tighten that nut down the rest of the way. So make sure you don't rotate this base plate, otherwise it will not fit back on there. Alright, so that's tight. Now we're going to put this all back together just like we did before. Okay, so this is now the new oil filter mounting surface right here. This is going to be your inlet and outlet lines for the actual cooler, which is going to get mounted next, which again is going to require some fabrication on my part, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal.